10 podcast. I am your host today, Rachel Martin, and we are here with Peter Riviera. And he is otherwise known as Pete, the Peptide Guy, which we are going to go into a little bit more detail of like why it is that. But you have a tremendous career, not only in this newer field, but being a 30-year health coach, personal trainer, just this amazing knowledge, kind of starting off early in the bodybuilding, huge muscle kind of time frame, but just how that's evolved. And then you kind of created this new platform in a sense.
Yeah, it's interesting. At some point, I realized that, that exercise and science kind of had to meet at some point. And, through supplementation, that never worked over the years and everything else. I wasn't really sure if that really what was the game changer. Mm-hmm. But peptides really are the game changer. And that's really put together that whole fitness, looking for Healthspan, looking for longevity aspect really on the mark now.
And what exactly is peptide? Like, I think of like a pill that you just pop in your mouth and it's like the famous weight loss stuff that's happening right now.
Yeah, I mean, the GLP-1s are absolutely, very popular.
What's GLP?
And that's the glucagon-like peptides.
Got it.
So you'll see them on TV. They'd be the Ozempic and the Mounjaros.
Got it.
Which is semaglutide and tirzepatide. And, those became very popular and they kind of put the peptides on the market. And the peptide is literally an amino acid chain of 2 peptides to 50. And that's all it really is.
Okay.
And they're signalers. So in our bodies, we have things that might not be working optimally that had been working before. Well, depending upon what peptides you take, it'll signal that part of your body to stimulate what it should be stimulating.
Okay.
And that's what makes it really interesting because there's a science behind it. And you're really working on a cellular level, which is really super cool because if you're not fixing things on a cellular level, mm-hmm. you're really just spinning your wheels in the mud.
Yeah. Well, and it's like your whole body's connected, so you kind of have to help it within the body to go out in a sense. Well, and this also helps with anti-aging, weight loss, immune support, tissue repair, and just overall life health span, correct?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I recommend that people, work with their physicians and things like that. I'm not a medical expert at all. I'm just a peptide consultant. I love reading the white papers and nerding out on it. But what I would say is, and find your biomarkers. There's a lot of things that peptides help with: cognition, sleep. There's a big march right now for women in their 40s and 50s that are going through perimenopause and menopause, and they're using peptides to offset those symptomatic things that they get from that.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned kind of the women in their 40s. How does this supposedly improve the health span journey? You hear the midlife crisis, and that's more mental than physical. But I had hip surgery at 36. I'm like, I wish I knew about this because you shouldn't be having hip surgery at 36. But our generation is getting so much younger with so many big injuries. I mean, you were talking earlier about literally having to, spinal surgery in a sense. So why is this a thing now when it never used to be, and how can this help?
It's becoming more apparent that these are out there and available. They've been around for a while. They haven't been mainstream.
Good to know.
And the reason they haven't been is, some people, the validation of it. But we have some amazing experts out there. Dr. William Seeds is one of them, who's really put the forefront with his company, SSRP. And they've really generated this push of bringing all these medical professionals, biohackers together and basically saying, hey, listen, let's get this stuff out there. Let's get people excited about being healthier, not just the living longer part, but the quality of life. That health span aspect to it is so huge, and peptides really can help that happen.
Yeah, no, that sounds like it. Well, and then why is it important to have somebody like you, the peptide consultant, come in? I mean, we talked a little bit about your background and like how long you've been in kind of the health and wellness area. It's not just like, oh, I've took class for 6 months and now I'm this salesperson of a medical device in a sense. That is kind of what most people think medicine is these days.
Yeah. So the advantage that we do have in the company that I work with is Soma Peptides, is that we do offer the peptide consultation, and that happens to be with me, is you actually get a person to speak to. All right. And our scientists make the protocols for our peptides specifically. So my role really is to find out what your wants are and what your needs, and then somewhere they meet in the middle.
Okay.
And then we figure that out through that conversation. And it's really difficult to do that if you don't have the availability to do that, as in just going online and purchasing from another company. And the response is, we'll just Google it.
Yeah.
And that can be very problematic and dangerous, because you're talking about injecting something into your system, not knowing where it's sourced from, not knowing if the dosing protocol is correct. What if things go sideways? What if the peptide works for you, but it doesn't work for me? Because that does happen. Peptides, the same peptide works differently in you than it would for me at different levels. Yeah. So to have a person to be able to talk to and ready, available to discuss that with you is a huge, huge advantage for us.
Yeah, I'm sure it's different for men, women, weight, age, health issues. Do you stay with them kind of through the process as well, or is it more just like initial and then kind of let the doctors in a sense take it from there?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and I pride myself on treating my clients like I did my personal training clients when I had them. So in that aspect, I'm with you. Yeah. I'm with you for the long haul. Yeah. You know, they literally have access to me pretty much 24/7, and they can ask questions whenever they want to and things. And I think that's invaluable. Sure. Because you have to be able to change things on the fly. And like I said, if somebody has an adverse effect to this and that, or something isn't working the way it is, then we can kind of figure it out.
Well, and it's more personable. It's not like you call up the help desk and it's a new person every single time and you have to start from the beginning, but you know their story, you know where they've struggled, you know what's worked, more than I'm able to tell a doctor in a sense. Yeah,
and I think that's the personal connection in it, that ability to be able to say, hey, you know what, I know everybody has a story. Right. And it's just, and that's kind of our line at Soma, is everybody has a story. Your body has a story, right?
Everybody has a story. Not everybody. Everybody.
Right. Everybody has a story, and you mentioned your hip, and your hip surgery, you have a story about that, and how you got there, and then everything after that. So when you start,
don't get old.
When you start opening that up, you can really utilize that to help people.
Yeah. No, definitely. So what do you want people to ultimately know about peptides, and kind of where do you see it next expanding, and like what the next kind of phase of it is?
I want people to understand that peptides are great for pretty much anybody, okay? Because they do different things. So they're, like we mentioned before, there are peptides for cognition. There's peptides for sleep. There's peptides for weight loss. There's peptides for increasing.
There's different versions of these. It's not like one thing helps all of this.
Exactly. Okay. No, there's multiple. So, it really is going to be a game changer for longevity and health span. And I think people want that. People don't want to grow old in pain in this country, which happens.
Yeah.
Listen, the medical system is where it is, and it does its thing, but integrating peptides into your life could really be life-changing. And I think that's what I want people to know, that they're there and you actually have, a place to come to that's safe, with us, at Soma Peptides and with me, where you can really have your health span level increased, helped, monitored, working with doctors, working with you, and getting you the results that you really not only want, but that you need.
Yeah. Well, and the generations, we're getting older and older. And so you don't want to live the last part of your life in the worst possible version of your life. And it sounds like this is definitely a step in that direction to help that kind of the aging process. Not necessarily looks and skin, and yes, that's important especially for some people, but more your health. Like, you don't want to sit down and your knees just like crack and ache and everything, but that it really helps with a lot of that kind of stuff. So your overall feel.
Yeah, and that's really the point too. Is it's not getting to 100. It's getting there, but as if you're 50. Or you feel like you're 50,
like
right?
That. Yeah.
So, getting to that marker is great. It's an achievement in itself, but how about a healthy 100 where you're actually still active?
Yeah.
And you can actually still do stuff, you know what I mean? As opposed to, like you said, being sick for 9-10 years and then you just move on.
Yeah.
So, that's where I think quality of life really comes in.
Yeah. So what do you most enjoy about this? I know you said that you're a consultant, you kind of stay along the journey with these people, but what keeps you coming back day after day and learning more as it evolves?
For me, it's the responses I get from the clients.
Yeah.
It's the messaging I get. It's just, it's kind of hard not to even get emotional about it. But when somebody sends you a message and they say, you've changed my life.
Yeah. Or
you saved my life. I sit back and I'm like, whoa. I'm like, I kind of guided you. But if that guide got you there, oh my God, am I doing something like that's really good for people, you know? And that's what keeps me going is
it gives you a purpose.
The success. Absolutely.
It's not just a job, it's a purpose.
It's absolutely a purpose because, you know, as the commercial says, you know, I'm not only, you know, the owner, I'm not the owner, but, you know, you know, I'm also a client, you know, I mean, I use all our peptides.
Yeah.
You know, I know what they do. I've used them, you know, to heal myself from 2 surgeries in the last year where doctors were like floored that you know, they thought it was a miracle. And I'm like, no, just peptides.
Yeah, they like cut into your throat, and like a week later you were in Vegas at a conference.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a month later, I'm like, you know, there walking around, you know, doing miles, you know, so it was pretty cool.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
well, thank you so much for sharing your journey and how you're helping people. I think that's just such an important thing that we lose track of, you know, in our day-to-day lives. And like you said, you get emotional about talking about certain things and people, but when you look back at it, yes, there's struggles along the way, but it sounds like those struggles aren't as much as it is the people you're helping and how important that is.
Yeah, and that connection, I think being human to another human is so important. And I take pride in that, and I want to be able to be there for people that maybe never felt they had anybody there, and are struggling, you know, in whatever way.
Medical field, it's like doctor after doctor after doctor, and it's like, nope, now I finally have somebody who can help me.
Yeah, you know, and like I said, you know, I'm just a guide, but if I can guide you in the right direction, then you know what, we did good work.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you so much for being here today. And we have, you know, Pete, the Peptide Guy. So that's your social media.
That's my social media thing. Absolutely. It's been a pleasure being here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for joining the 10 and 10 podcast today. Tune in for our next one.